Welcome back to Flourish. I'm Diane Planet In, and you're in the right place if you're ready to create an inspired life. And we do so by working on our own personal development so we can be strong role models for those we love and mentor, and strong for our own personal well-being. Today, we continue our journey in James Clear best-selling book called Atomic Habits. And this chapter is all about the secret to self-control. So let's dive right in. When scientists analyze people who appear to have tremendous self control, it turns out those individuals aren't all that different from those who are struggling. Instead, disciplined people are better at structuring their lives in a way that does not require heroic willpower and self control. In other words, they spend less time in tempting situations because they're the designer of their lives. And we talked about that last week. The people with the best self control are typically the ones who need to use it the least. It's easier to practice self restraint when you don't have to use it very often. So, yes, perseverance, grit, willpower are essential to success. But the way to improve these qualities is not by wishing you were a more disciplined person, but by creating a more disciplined environment. And I'll just give you, for instance, if you feel like there's not enough time in the day, you need to look at your schedule, you need to look at your calendar, you need to look and see where you can find a little glimmer, change something around. Time blocking works for a lot of people. I love to schedule as much as humanly possible written down on my calendar. Other people like to bookend their days, meaning in the morning, they do something they love, and in the evening, they do something they love. And the time in between is the work time. So you don't have to worry about, expanding time during the day because you get a reward at the end of the day on what you really want to do. So, how do you create a more disciplined environment? Well, he says this counterintuitive idea makes even more sense once you understand what happens when a habit is formed in the brain. A habit that has been encoded in the mind is ready to be used whenever the relevant situation arises. Once a habit has been encoded, the urge to act follows whenever the environmental cues reappear. This is one reason behavior change techniques can backfire. And it gives the example in here how showing pictures of blackened lungs to smokers leads to higher levels of anxiety. And I think they're right on the package, which drives many people to reach for a cigarette. If you're not careful about cues, you can cause the very behavior you want to stop. Bad habits are autocatalytic. The process feeds itself. They foster the feelings they try to numb. You feel bad, so you eat junk food. Because you eat junk food, you feel bad. Oh my gosh, right? It just goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Researchers refer to this phenomena as cue-induced wanting. An external trigger causes a compulsive craving to repeat a bad habit. Once you notice something, you begin to want it. This process is happening all the time, often without us realizing it. And I'm going to just give you, for instance, if there's chips in the house and I know they're there and I open a cupboard and I see them, I'll be like, oh, no, not for me. But as the day progresses, those chips are calling my name. They're calling my name. I don't have chips in the house. I don't know what it is. I don't eat sweets. I don't like sugar. But give me a really good potato chip. Yum. So I just don't have them in the house. Do not buy them at the grocery store. So why are these chips in my cupboard? Well, guess what? I don't live alone. So that is another struggle, right? Very, very important to keep in the back of your mind. He says, here's the punchline. You can break a habit, but you're unlikely to forget it. Once the mental grooves of habit have been carved into your brain, they are nearly impossible to remove entirely, even if they go unused for quite a while. And that means that simply resisting temptation is an ineffective strategy. It is hard to maintain a Zen attitude in a life filled with interruptions. It takes too much energy. In the short run, you can choose to overpower temptation. In the long run, we become a product of the environment we live in. Think potato chips, right? To put it bluntly, he says, I have never seen someone consistently stick to a positive habit in a negative environment. A more reliable approach is to cut habits off at the source. One of the most practical ways to eliminate a bad habit is to reduce exposure to the cue that causes it. And you mentioned Andrew Huberman's podcast the other day. He speaks to this personally on how his cell phone became such a distraction. He would hand it over to one of the students, say, like, just keep this for me, for today, or put it in another room or something, whatever that cue is. And in my case, I literally never buy potato chips, whatever that is for you. And it might be more than one thing. And he's not referencing a major addiction here. That needs medical professional help. He's talking about our day-to-day lives. I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that, because if you are struggling with an addiction, that's a whole other idea. That's a whole other idea. So how do we reduce the exposure? How do we reduce these cues? Well, he gives a few examples. If you're continually feeling like you're not enough, stop following social media accounts that trigger jealousy and envy. If you're wasting too much time watching television, move the TV out of the bedroom. If you're spending too much money on electronics, quit reading reviews of the latest tech gear. And I know, new iPhone's coming out. Do you really need it? Think about it. He says this practice is an inversion of the first law of behavior change. Rather than make it obvious, you can make it invisible. He says remove a single cue and the entire habit often fades away. Self-control is a short-term strategy, not a long-term one. You may be able to resist temptation once or twice, but it's unlikely you can muster the willpower to override your desires every time. Instead of summoning a new dose of willpower whenever you want to do the right thing, your energy would be better spent optimizing your environment. This is the secret to self-control. Make the cues of your good habits obvious and the cues of your bad habits invisible. It's easier to avoid temptation than resist it. One of the most practical ways to eliminate a bad habit is to reduce exposure to the cue that causes it. Reduce the exposure. So create a good habit, make it obvious. Bad habit, break that, make it invisible. So that's the final summary for the book on the first law about making it obvious. I hope you really enjoyed that, and hit that subscribe button. We're moving on to the second law, which is make it attractive. And we're going to do each segment individually, because you can really digest this and absorb it and live it and be it, and really will come to fruition, because next time we're going to talk about how to make a habit irresistible. Ooh, that sounds fun. I'll see you then.